I was going through my archive of videos and I came across the Gameshell Firmware update video that I did last year in December. It unfortunately never seen the light of day, but I think it's still relevant, especially for those who are still playing their retro games on the Gameshell. There is a kernel update, there's a GPU update, and my personal favorite, and the one that kind of interested me, and I hope they keep going with this, that is the addition of indie games. Let's check out the Gameshell Firmware update. Let's do what I do best. Let's babble a little bit. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Reviews by this guy. And before we get into the topic of today, I'd like to say don't forget to let me spend my money so you don't waste yours by hitting that subscribe button. And to keep informed of new videos being uploaded on the We Deem channel, you gotta go ahead and click the bell. Now let's get into the topic of today, and that is the updated firmware for the Gameshell. Now let's get into the topic of today, and that's the Gameshell firmware update. It is version 0.5. Now, like I said in the intro of this video was supposed to be uploaded December of last year, and it just kind of got lost in my archives and never seen the light of day. There hasn't been any updates to the firmware since then, so we're still on version 0.5. And in this version, you have a Linux kernel v5.3.6 update, stable open source GPU driver, Clockwork warehouse is open, and apparently that's where you can download games and apps for your Gameshell. You have RetroArch version 1.8.1, auto expand file system. There's a couple of bugs fixed, and also there is the addition of indie games, which we'll go into in this video, so do stay tuned. I think that's about the middle, I'm not entirely sure, but it's in there. Either way, let's get into that video, and before we get into the updated firmware, I'd like to take a look, as you will see in the clips from December, the current firmware and the additions or changes that I made to the Gameshell before making the update. Let's stop babbling and let's get into it. Alright, the topic of this video is the updated firmware on the Gameshell, which you can get on the Clockwork Gameshell website. I'll leave a link to that in the description, but before we actually dive into that, I'd like to take a look at the original firmware, which this will be a little bit different, but I'll tell you, or I'll point out what I have changed since I got the Kickstarter Gameshell a while ago. I don't even remember the exact time. But either way, this is the actual operating system of the Gameshell. It's very Linux-like. It has a old retro Mac feel to it. That's why I like it. That's also why I picked the white shell when there were different colors, because it just gives me that retro computer feel. But you have your settings. You have retro games, and when you go into retro games, I always forget it's B. All you had in here, if you guys can see, you had the Game Boy, you did not have Genesis, I think you had MAME, you had Game Boy Color, you did not have NES that I remember correctly. It might have been in there. You can go ahead and check that video out where I did a review on this. You can see exactly what was on here. PlayStation definitely wasn't on here. As you can see, there's a color icon. I have a video, which you can check the card at the top, showing you how to get different icons on here. I believe you did have SNES, but that was about it. I had to put the Genesis one on here. I had to put PlayStation. I'm pretty sure I had to put Nintendo. That was not pre-installed on the original firmware. And on this main screen, all you had was settings, retro games, you had Cave Story, you had music player, you had the power off, RetroArch, Tiny Cloud, and Free Doom. This Rick's Dangerous was not on there. I had to install that. I have a video on that too. Don't forget to check the playlist. You did not have Open Jazz, which is Jazz the Jackrabbit, which is a PC game that I used to love playing when I was a kid. You had Duke Nukem, of course. I liked playing Duke Nukem. And Bomberman here. That wasn't on there either. Like I said, I have videos showing you how to get those on there. So let's go ahead, let's check out the new firmware. Let's first look at the main menu here, see what they added. I don't recall it being able to switch back to the beginning of the menu when you continuously hit left, so that's definitely new. As you can see, you still have the retro game selection, which is going to be your retro emulators. You have indie games here, that's new, that was not there. RetroArch was there, Cave Story was definitely there. You have this Coco DM, Pico 8, then you got Tick 80, you got Love 2D. These are more pre-installed games on the main menu. You have Utilities, which I haven't checked out myself yet. You have a Reload UI, Music Player, Tiny Cloud, and then your Power Off. So some of these features we're going to be checking out. I'm going to be checking out for the first time with you. I haven't checked them out. Let's go in the emulators first. Let's take a look at that. As you can see in this, I have it set up for A. The other one was B. So confusing. Alright, let's start here. You have MAME. You have Nestopia, which is Nintendo. As I said, I think I had to install that myself. They have it preloaded. You have SFC9X. That is preloaded on here. You got Pocket SNES. So those are two different NES emulators here. This, I guess, would be Super Famicom. This is your SNES that came out in the States. You have Game Boy Color, which was pre-installed on the other one. You have Game Boy Advanced, which was definitely not pre-installed. Here is another Game Boy Advanced emulator. You have Pico Drive, which is a Mega Drive emulator, or your Sega Genesis. You have Game Gear, another one that's new. Coleco, Linux, you dumb mother. And you have Mupen 64. I haven't tested any 64 games on that. I guess I probably should do a video on that as well, but I'm sure someone has one floating around. And you have Fuse, and this, I guess, would kind of looks like a Mac emulator. I honestly don't even know what UAE Plus is. Guess I should look that up. Alright, I had to look it up. That UAE Plus is an emulator that emulates the hardware of Commodore, International, and Amiga range of computers. I didn't know that, so that's really cool. And you have PlayStation, which we've done on this channel before on the Gameshell. And like I said, by far my favorite feature of the new firmware update, and that is indie games. And as you can see, there are a selected few of indie games. You got Planet Busters. This is by Melon People. What a lovely name. The game demo. God, it went too fast. You guys can pause and read it. Here goes Planet Busters. I'm guessing this is just a demo. Hey, stupid, what are you waiting for? Get over to that useless planet. What a way of with words. And you gotta kind of get, I believe, down to the core or something. I can't remember. I have played it before. I actually forget. There you go. You gotta dig. I get it. And that blows up the planet. Busted. You got open type. Oh God, I can't read upside down. Terrain, I believe that says. This is from Epic Mega Games. Ellipse. As you can see, it is a shooter. You can, in the menu system, as you've seen before, you can upgrade your weaponry. And I'm guessing you pick up different cubes that are different weaponry and ship upgrades. Then you got number 909. Here is number 909. Press A to dash. Press left and right. Wow, I don't know what I did, but I messed up. It's one of those games where you gotta keep pressing the button to stay afloat, as you can see. And you gotta miss obstacles. I obviously suck. You got Nyan Cat. And here's the Nyan Cat, which has definitely been the mascot of the Clockwork game show. Honestly, I really don't get what you're supposed to do in this. Jesus Christ. What? You got 2048. Here is 2048. And I guess it's some sort of puzzle game, and I am completely screwing up and don't know how to play it. Hurricane. And here's Hurricane. That's exactly what it is. The gun's weird though. Oh, there you go. And this is Gsp Launcher. Here was the last game in that indie games thing, and as you can see, it is the Gsp Launcher. It seems to have Breakout, Defender, and Invaders. Nothing too special here. Let's check out what this CocoDM is. And as you see, I guess it just loads your freeware games on here because that's Free Doom. And come to think about it, I didn't see Free Doom on the main menu, so I guess it's in here now. That's what CocoDM is. Then you got your Pico driver. I don't remember if this actually worked. Yeah, all it did was put an icon on the main screen to launch Pico 8. You actually have to purchase that emulator. You got TIC-08. Alright, turns out this TIC-80, which I just learned to myself, is a fantasy computer for making, playing, and sharing tiny games. There are built-in tools for development, code, sprites, maps, sound editors, and the command line, which is enough to create a mini retro game. That honestly, that's kind of a cool feature. I obviously am not going to dive into that. I mean, kind of reading that makes me regret selling this. Maybe at some point I will be probably picking up a GameShell again, not the Kickstarter version. That's definitely right there. Once again, sets this guy aside from any other retro handheld that's on the market. You can't go creating your own retro mini games with the RG350 or the Pocket Go 2 or the new LDK game. You just can't do it, and that's why this GameShell is so cool. And honestly, I wish they would actually come up with a second version of this, a newer model. We got Love 2D, which I think is a game, I hope. Let's check out what utilities are. I'm interested to find out what's in this folder. And it looks like we have a Dingo, UX Commander, and Beam. As you can see, we have seen this on the RG350. This is basically a file system. Now, this is something you did not see on the original firmware that shipped with the GameShell. Alright, we got a Reload UI. And I'm guessing that just refreshes the main menu. Yep. And if there were any changes, it'll make those. I'm assuming that. You obviously know what the music player is. That was on the original firmware. And Tiny Cloud just gives you all the information that you need to get into the GameShell via your Wi-Fi on your PC. And you can move games that way. I've done a video on that as well. I want to go ahead and take a look at some of the changes to the settings menu. Alright, here's the settings menu, and I probably should have been recording this way the whole time so you can get a closer look at what was going on the screen. But I just hate holding my hand around the camera. It is completely annoying, and it causes a lot of muscle fatigue and pain. You have airplane mode, which is originally on there, the power option, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, sound. All this stuff was originally on here. I don't remember if... Whoops. I don't remember if storage was. I think it might have been, but as you can see, it's saying there is 14% free on the SD card, so there's not a lot of storage left on here, or that might be the internal storage because my SD card is 32 gigs. Although I didn't expand the file system, so who knows. Time zone was there. Languages, I believe, was there. Update launcher, I don't remember if that was there. And maybe that'll work, but this is stable 1.25 version. And maybe we can check for it, an update, see if there is an update. And as you can see there, cool little animation with the rainbow. And you got Retro Core Manager. And as you can see, it only has 2 of them, and I guess those are the 2 that were downloaded from RetroArch. Power off, yes. Button layout, this is where you can change the button layouts. It's on Xbox compatible right now. The other launcher had the A and B switch, which is kind of like the Nintendo Switch or your Nintendo products. Here's the theme manager, which is one of the things that they said was an update on this. So let's go ahead and check out and see what that looks like. And this is the black theme. I don't know, I like it, but honestly, I'm a bigger fan of the whole retro Mac computer look. I like that launcher better than this one. Not saying that this isn't cool looking, this Black Knight theme, and the icons are cool. It looks like a retro arcade. Now they have this Switch Launcher Go. I don't know what that is. And as you can see, that icon changed. It seems to have gone to a lighter on the graphics side, I guess, to save battery life and not take up resources. And it switched the buttons again. Then you have this GPU driver switch. You got the FB Turbo driver, which is software rendering, and then you got this. They talked about that in the list of things that were updated in the firmware. You have a Lima driver, which is experimental GPU rendering.
It's that time for the final thoughts on the Gameshell Firmware update version 0.5. We took a look at a lot of new features, some cool, some not all that impressive. As you know, the Linux kernel was upgraded to version 5.3.6. There's a much more stable open source GPU driver. RetroArch is upgraded to version 1.8.1. There were some known bugs that were fixed. There were 3 different apps that were kind of impressive, and that was the Love 2D, Pico 8, and the other one, which I'm drawing a blank currently. You'd think I would have had these in the notes, but that'll be thrown up on the screen. All 3 apps allow you to create your own 2D games, which makes the Gameshell stand out from the rest of the retro handhelds out there. Now, I know there hasn't been any updates since this firmware update, which is kind of upsetting. I would have liked to seen it keep going, because they introduced indie games, which is the thing that I was happy or excited to see the most. Unfortunately, some of the games are good and some of them weren't all that impressive. I'd like to see more added, but I haven't seen anything on the internet. I guess if I find something, maybe there are some members of the community that might have created their own games. I'll link those down in the description below if I find anything. There were some changes to the settings, some useful, some Either way, is it worth upgrading? Yes, of course it's worth upgrading. For one, it adds a bunch of emulators to the retro games folder, which is something you would have had to do yourself. Now it's done it for you. RetroArch being upgraded, there are a lot of other cores being added there that wouldn't have been there before without the upgrade. So it's definitely worth upgrading. Definitely worth checking out. If you have any questions on the Gameshell Firmware update, please leave those in the comments down below. If you know where there are some other indie games that you can get for the Gameshell, I know somehow you can get Celeste on the Gameshell. Please leave those in the comments down below. If you know of any updates that are going to be made in the future, please leave those in the comments down below as well. If you liked what was contained in this video, do consider hitting the thumbs up. If you thought this video was useless, I probably should have just left it in the archive where it belonged. You can always hit those thumbs down. If you found the video to be of some sort of value, please consider sharing amongst friends. And as always, don't forget to let me spend my money so you don't waste yours by hitting that subscribe button.